Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular public board meeting for November 2024. I am Trustee Duncan. Want to welcome everyone and start us off in a good way by recognizing and acknowledging both the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work together tonight. Trustees, our first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Trustee Painter, seconded by Trustee Kwan. We have, I know, one amendment to our agenda this evening, and that is to move new business item H1 up to follow approval of the agenda. And so that's the presentation from the Human Rights Commissioner, who is very kindly joined us this evening. May I have a mover to make that amendment? Thank you, Trustee McNally, seconded by Trustee Kwan. Any discussion in relation to the amendment to the agenda? All right, hearing none, I'm going to call the question on the amendment to the agenda with a show of hands, please, trustees. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, we have an agenda as amended. I'm going to call the question subject to any further amendments. All right, so all those in favor of the amended agenda with a final show of hands. All those opposed, abstentions. Okay, so that's the balance of the board approving with Trustee Mabobi abstaining. All right, thank you, trustees. All right, without further ado, it was my great pleasure to welcome the Human Rights Commissioner of British Columbia, Kazar Govinder. So pleased to have you here with us this evening. We know you're extremely busy, and we are grateful that you're going to spend some of your evening with us. I know you're here tonight to speak to school liaison officers. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and to kick things off whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation to be here with all of you to engage in this important conversation. I'm joining you from unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territory in what's now known as Vancouver. So coming to you from across the water, and starting my comments out with both the gratitude and recognition for who's cared for these lands for so many generations, and also coupling that with the sense of responsibility that I think all of us who are settlers and migrants on this land hold, but particularly myself as Human Rights Commissioner, and of course is directly relevant to the work that we're here to talk about tonight. So as you know, I'm here to talk about School Liaison Officer programs, or SLO programs for short. There has been a fair amount of misrepresentation or misunderstandings about my position on these programs in the public eye, and so I welcome every opportunity to try to set the record straight. I want to recognize the very hard work that the Victoria School Board has done on this issue, including what I understand to be extensive consultations with diverse families and students who are part of your educational community. I know that the controversies that surround these issues raise really deep feelings on all sides of the conversation. So I just want to emphasize, or start by emphasizing, that I think we all start from the same place in this conversation. We all want our schools to be safe places for our young people to learn and to build their sense of community and belonging. It's important to know that we start from this common ground, but where we may differ is in how we achieve that goal. So my starting point in coming up with our position as BC's Office of the Human Rights Commissioner is that policy must always be based in the evidence to avoid bias, stereotypes, and reinforcing systemic discrimination. And it must be evidence-based to be effective. So I want to be clear that this is far from an ideological stance against police. This is how to best protect children's safety, well-being, and human rights. If safety and belonging are our shared goals, which I believe they are, the key question must be, what does the evidence show us is the best way to achieve that goal? Right now, we simply don't have enough research on school school liaison officers to say definitively one way or another whether they will keep our young people safe and thriving. We know that policing decisions in particular must be evidence-based to keep us all equally safe. And that's why my office did extensive research on equity issues in policing in BC. Based on what we found in this research, including the fact that there are significant gaps in the evidence on that supports school liaison officers, my recommendations regarding the program are twofold. School boards should end SLO programs unless they can demonstrate an evidence-based need for them that cannot be met through any other means. In making this assessment, school boards must center the impact of continuing SLO programs, the impact particularly on Indigenous, Black, and other student populations, such as young people with disabilities. The province should undertake this important research to assess the value and the harms of SLO programs. And then the second part of this recommendation is that the psychosocial and educational roles of SLOs should be reassigned to civilians with experience in coaching and leading other extracurricular activities, child and youth counseling, trauma-informed practice, sexual assault prevention, substance use education, and bullying prevention. The funds and resources which would otherwise go to SLO programs should be redirected to civilians to fulfill these roles. So I want to be clear that canceling SLO programs in lieu of this evidence, which is what I've been calling for, does not hinder valid investigations or responses to criminal activities. That's not what this is about. That function of police continues to be the appropriate role for police. It is the role of armed and uniformed officers in schools outside of a law enforcement context, where they are in schools simply to build relationships with children and youth. That's the question here, not the ability of police to investigate gang activity. I make this recommendation for research because we have a significant gap in our data in BC, and I've already sort of started to touch on this issue. So that is that there is no credible and comprehensive BC-specific research that puts the perspectives of young people who are racialized or disabled at the center of the analysis about the value of SLO programs. But that doesn't mean that we're without any information on this at all. Released in the fall of 2021, so 3 years ago now, our report, Equity is Safer, is a research report identifying systemic racism in certain policing practices in BC. In what we now believe to be the largest study of policing data ever done in Canada, we found significant racial disparities impacting Indigenous and Black people, and to a lesser extent, although still highly disproportionate impact, on Arab, West Asian, and Hispanic people, specifically in relation to arrests or detentions and police-involved mental health incidents. For example, Black people are grossly overrepresented in arrest statistics involving the Vancouver Police Department. In fact, they are 5.3 times more likely to be arrested than their presence in the population would predict. Indigenous people are 17 times more likely to be arrested in Vancouver. Indigenous and Black people are far more overrepresented in public disorder offenses and the administration of justice charges, than charges involving serious violence. Similar overrepresentation in the statistics occurs in proactive policing practices, for example, when police are conducting street checks. So while it's not always easy to identify or isolate the causes of these kinds of disparities, what makes, making the link to causation for these statistics, this evidence around proactive policing practices, so where police are not responding to calls, but actively stopping people on the street unrelated to criminal activity, this clearly shows that in some circumstances, the problem lies in police bias. Behind all these numbers that we collected are, of course, real people and communities who experience real harm as a result of disproportionate policing or discriminatory policing. We cannot forget how deeply individuals and communities feel this harm. And we can't forget the enduring consequences that can flow from interactions with police and the criminal justice system. It is a well-founded principle of policing that community trust is essential to effective policing practices. Yet I hear on a regular basis from many Indigenous leaders and community members about how they don't trust police and don't feel safe with them. Given these numbers and these experiences, we know that Indigenous, Black, and other racialized children are witnessing their communities' disproportionately negative interactions with police, and therefore may well have well-founded fears about the police themselves. As one Vancouver student noted, quote, "As a Black student, when the first thing I see when I walk into school in the morning is an armed police officer, it automatically gives me the message, you aren't really welcome." So indeed, these fears are well borne out in other jurisdictions. For example, research in 2020 in the US suggests that when faced with the same behavioral infraction, so same kind of behavior we're looking at, school liaison officers are more likely to arrest or charge Black students than white students. And while white students are more likely to be cautioned, they're more likely to arrest or charge Black students, while white students are more likely to be cautioned or diverted into informal conflict resolution or treatment programs. Also, youth with disabilities, those who identify, for example, as having a learning, emotional, or behavioral condition or disorder, constitute a disproportionate number of the school-based arrests. These effects, as you can imagine, affect academic performance, future prospects. They criminalize common student indiscretions. They make students feel like they're under constant surveillance at school, and signal to students whose personal and community histories involve oppressive police actions that their school is not a welcoming space for them. And I know there's been a lot of criticism of any reliance on US studies. So I just want to be clear that I'm referring to this US data only to make the point that this research raises important questions for us about how much these same issues occur in BC. Questions that we don't have the answers to because we have a lack of research here. On the other side of the coin, there also does not appear to be any comprehensive evaluation data about SLOs creating a safer environment in schools, especially for these particular communities that I've mentioned. Since our shared goal, again, is to ensure schools are safe and welcoming places for students, a key question is whether students feel unsafe at school or whether there is actually any safety problem here to solve. So to this end, I've taken a look at the data from 2015 to 2024 that was made available by police whose jurisdictions overlap with School District 61. And the available evidence shows no clear correlation between an increase in gang activities in schools and the end of the SLO program. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, the qualitative data is limited. For example, the Victorian Esquimalt Police Board have stated that they couldn't release much of the information on gang activity as most of it's classified. So we don't have a lot of information on that side. Second, the quantitative data is of low quality and it's limited. For example, the data released by police does not reflect gang incidents effectively or comprehensively, and it does not reflect how many incidents occur at schools in particular. Third, the data that is reflected does not demonstrate a correlation between increased calls to police and the end of the school liaison officer program. So for example, the Victorian Esquimalt Police Department data shows that call-outs to elementary schools between 2015 and 2024 have remained relatively stable, reaching a high in 2020, while police call-outs to high schools have decreased between 2015 and 2024. This was also the case for a School District 61 schools served by the Saanich Police Department. Police calls to elementary, middle, and high schools all remained relatively stable between 2015 and 2024, with a slight downward trend from 2021. So no correspondence here between when the SLO program existed and when it was canceled, and all of the data at least the data that we have available from what's being released by police, that we don't see an increase in calls to the police when there wasn't school liaison officer programs. The fourth reason that the data isn't terribly helpful to us is that all that really could be looked for in this kind of data is correlation not causation. So any data used to show that crime rates involving youth went up this year, which, as I say, doesn't seem to exist anyway, doesn't show that the cancellation of the SLO program was responsible for this. And it's a classic fallacy that we don't want to fall into, that correlation is mistaken for causation. In fact, we have no evidence about the impact of the canceled program. All of this data, or the lack of this data, this picture that I'm painting with the information that, again, that's being made available to us, taken together is enough to raise a reasonable and serious concern that SLO programs cause more harm than good. As I hope you will have heard today, my call to action is entirely focused on evidence-based decision-making to ensure our children's safety, well-being, and human rights. Many parents and educators have reached out to me and to my office to share stories, both of how their children have been helped by SLO programs and being harmed by the programs. And I really want to emphasize that I'm really grateful to every single person who's reached out to share their story. This is such an important conversation that we're having. These lived experiences are an important part of the puzzle, but we also need information from those who don't feel comfortable speaking up, those who aren't sharing their stories. And very importantly, we need real data on which we can base our policy decisions. To be clear, this information exists, it just isn't being collected or studied. And I think it should be concerning to all of us. It should be disappointing to all of us that despite the significant controversy and strong feelings surrounding this issue on all sides for many years, the government has so far refused to conduct any comprehensive research on how these programs impact marginalized students and whether they actually result in the benefits that they claim to. I am confident that all of us, educators, policymakers, human rights advocates, and especially parents and young people, are on the same page in prioritizing our children's well-being, especially in schools. If we also agree that our policing and justice systems must be rooted in fact and evidence rather than hyperbole and moral panic, then in my view, there is only one conclusion to reach. In order for these programs to be run, SLOs must be proven to be effective in addressing harms to children and not causing harms to children. We need to do the research to get that evidence and pause potentially harmful activities in the meantime. I made this recommendation to the legislature and to the provincial government 3 years ago, as I've said, and still no action has been taken. To protect the safety and human rights of our children, our duty is to act now. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here to offer these words and this explanation. And I know we've got another 10 minutes or so for discussion and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Again, we really appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts and your recommendations and providing points of clarification as well for the benefit of everyone here around our virtual table and at home listening tonight. So yeah, you also very kindly offered to for us to open up the floor to questions, and so thank you for that. I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to look to trustees and partners around the table. If you do have any questions for the commissioner, if you just raise your hand, I will call on you in turn. Who would like to kick us off? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
I'm always game. Thank you, first of all, for being here tonight, and really appreciate some context that you can give us on what's happened over the past 3 years. My question actually for you is, what advice can you offer school districts in BC to protect student rights when they have interactions with police?
When they have interactions with police? Sorry, you changed positions just as saying that. Where are you? Yes, I see you. Is that what you were asking, when they have interactions with police? Yeah, I think that there has been some material produced by BC Civil Liberties Association, I believe, aimed at helping students understand what their rights are. And so I think, there's some great resources to look to, and certainly it's important for students to educate. That's an important area to understand, is what are your rights and responsibilities, what are you obligated to do if police ask or demand something of you, and what are you not obligated to do. So I really commend looking at those resources and knowing that you do have human rights, but also recognizing that that's hard to stand up for those rights if you're a young person and there's someone in a position of quite a lot of authority making demands of you that you may not be comfortable with. So really hope that folks will take the time to educate themselves, and parents can look to those resources as well.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. President Howe, go ahead.
Hello, thank you for being here. It's really interesting to hear you speak. I heard you speak to the police board in July. And one thing I recall is the discussion around the call for research. And you indicated then that if the police board joined your call for that research, you felt like it would have more impetus and impact. And I guess I have two questions. One is, has that happened yet? And two, can you offer advice for other groups who could also add their voices to that call for research?
Thank you for the question. No, that has not occurred. I have, as far as I am aware, that request has not gone. It certainly hasn't come to my attention whether the police have made any more direct request to government for the research to happen. It certainly hasn't crossed my desk, or I haven't been alerted to it. And I would welcome that from any police department, any school board, but also others in community. I mean, this has become such a hot button issue. I think it's really important that the province hears that this call for, again, evidence-based decision-making be heard. I genuinely am unclear on the obstacle of why we wouldn't proceed with this. I think some of the original justification for it was, there's urgency to it, but we're now 3 years in and it hasn't been initiated. So I am genuinely puzzled about why we wouldn't want to again, we all have a shared goal of making safer spaces, why we wouldn't want research to back that up. And I encourage everyone to contact your MLA if this is something that you would like to see happen. And certainly, if you are listening, you are part of an institution like an elected member of a school board around the province, or on a police board, that you encourage your institution to take that position. It would serve all of our purposes here to move forward. This doesn't need to be a positional issue to call for research. This is truly not an ideological stance. It's simply a call for more information.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Trustee Bayo.
Hi. My question was kind of answered already. I was going to ask, for kind of the same thing of more advice in who do we reach out for to request that research. I know that when we did our 2-year review of the program, even though that was a much smaller scope than what ideally would be happening, we definitely got a lot of information about student experience and specific incidences, and a lot that really had a direct effect on our ultimate decision. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for speaking with us today. Thank you for your thoughts, because they've been very valuable and a very clear and concise summary of a lot of the issues that came up during our review of the SPLO program. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bayo. Trustee Gagnon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the Commissioner for speaking to us this evening. One of the things that was presented in your letter from 2 years ago was linking to a statement that was released by the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police in 2020, asking for more evidence-based research around, as they called them, school resource officers, SROs, SPLOs, whatever you want to call them. Would it be helpful to see the BC Association of Chiefs of Police do a similar thing? I know we kind of touched on it already, but I'm specifically trying to call out that particular group vocally right now.
I think any calls to action from the institutions involved would be very helpful. I would like to see the research itself conducted by the ministry, because I think it will provide the most kind of holistic, comprehensive view, and hopefully research that can really, as I say, prioritize and centralize the voices of those who may be most impacted. But I absolutely think it would be helpful if all police agencies and organizations, be them umbrella organizations or individual departments, called for this kind of research.
Thank you both. Trustee Mabobi, go ahead.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Trustee Mabobi.
There we go. Sorry about that. Back online here. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Commissioner, for being here tonight. I feel as though my question has already been partially answered, but I will ask it anyway just to ensure that I get a complete answer. So I'm wondering about the same letter that Trustee Gagnon just mentioned from 2 years ago, November 25th, letter to the province requesting your commission of empirically sound research into the impacts of SPLOs on K-12 students. I'll note that we sent a similar letter on August 8th, 2023, and I'm wondering if you received a response at all.
To my letter to the government calling for the research? I have received response, and I've received a couple of responses to it upon further follow-up as well. And with the, we obviously it was pre this formation of government, pre this latest election, and I received the response that they would not be going forward with the research. That was my understanding from the correspondence I received. I have not. I haven't had the chance to explore it more fully with the current configuration of government yet, post-election.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just to clarify, our letter of the 8th of August, 2023, making that request for that empirically sound research to be conducted, we have not received a response to date. So just for information. Trustee Kwan, I think, was next, but correct me if I'm wrong, Trustee Kwan. Okay, do you mind if I start with President Howe and then I'll come back to you, Trustee Kwan? Thank you. President Howe.
It really was Trustee Kwan, but I'll be quick. Thanks. And I can't believe I got 2 questions. Thank you very much. I know that this issue is really of high interest for a variety of people, and people hold very differing views depending on lots of things in their experience. And I was wondering, in the research, I was thinking about the impacts of, or the potential impacts of, the programs on people. We talked about groups, particularly racialized and disabled, but I'm also wondering about the intersection of socioeconomic status, and if you've seen any research that kind of talks to that intersection of class and of other marginalization.
That's a great question. I cannot pull any out of my head right at the moment, but I suspect there is a paper on our website by Dr. Samuel Wortley, who we did some research for us as part of the work we did on our Equity is Safer report on policing, and this is the sort of some of the background research that really led us to the conclusion that we don't have the kind of Canadian-based research that we need on this topic. In the course of her review of the research that exists, she does talk about the US studies that are available, so that you can kind of see where the research could go. And so you may want to take a look there. I'm sorry that I can't answer that very well off the top of my head. I imagine the answer is yes, that research is there. I just can't point you to an exact study. Thank you.
Trustee Kwan, thanks for your patience. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm excited that I get a second question too. I actually wanted to, you mentioned, this is it's a hot topic. It's ended up being a very divisive topic as well, which from my point of view is it's been sad to see the divisiveness that's happened. I would hope with a learning community, we can be a little more collaborative and work together. But I wondered, what would you say to members of our broader community, our learning community, staff members who perhaps are not happy over the decision that the board made to end the SPLO program? Is there anything that you think might help with
Yeah.
giving some context to that?
Yeah, actually, I really appreciate the question, because where I'll take it is that I actually think that the answer lies in this shared agenda around needing the research, because again, I think that really serves everyone's purposes. Is we all want our kids to be safer. The people who feel very strongly that officers in schools make our kids safer and maybe have had a personal experience that supports that, why wouldn't you want the data to actually back up that assertion, and sort of on all sides? So it feels to me that the uniting piece, although it hasn't turned out to be, but I mean, this is my call to action from this meeting, is that we can unite around this call for better understanding. Does the SLO program actually keep young people safer? And does it cause the harm that it has caused in other places or not? Do we see that? If it doesn't cause the harm and creates better effect, well, we all share the goal of wanting our kids to be safer. This isn't an ideological stance against police. It's genuinely wanting a system that will create safe and welcoming environments in our schools, which again serves all of us. So if you are concerned about the program being cut, call for the research that you think will show what you think it will show. It doesn't hurt anybody to want that support. And I really think that's what can unite us through, as you say, what's been a very unfortunately divisive issue.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I know we're a few minutes over the time that you committed to us this evening, but we really appreciate you so patiently bearing with us. We are so excited to have you here, and I'm sure there are many, many more questions, but I know we have reached the end of our time with you this evening. So you just have our gratitude for all the good work that you and your office are doing on behalf of British Columbians. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you again for the opportunity and for all the work you're doing on holding this difficult issue in your roles here. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Good night. Okay, folks, I'm going to move us back to our agenda. We are now at A3, which is trustee elections. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to the Secretary Treasurer for this portion of our agenda. Secretary Treasurer. Sorry, Secretary Treasurer, we can't actually hear you. I think one of your microphones must be muted. Can't hear you yet, I don't think. Would you mind just testing? Oh, I think I might have heard something.
Yeah, I think you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much. Secretary Treasurer, whenever you're ready.
I think we're okay.
All right. Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay. So I was just saying that we were at A3 trustee elections, specifically A, election of chair. So the position of chair of the Board of Education will be elected this evening for the term of 1 year, ending in November 2025. The election process will be completed by text message sent from trustees to Associate Superintendent Art. I did share that number with you by email earlier today. Please let me know if you do not have it. I'm happy to resend that. Maybe just let me know if you have any issues. Okay. It's Trustee McNally. just resent the email to everyone, so it should come to the top of your email. Is everyone ready to go? Okay, just let me know if there's any issues. Okay, so I'm now going to call for nominations for the position of Chair of the Board of Education. Please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of Chair of the Board of Education to Associate Superintendent Art using the phone number that's been emailed to you. I just want to make sure that everyone who wanted to vote has voted. We have a couple of trustees who have not sent a text message, so I'll give you a couple, not a couple minutes, a minute, if you want to, and if after that, if we haven't received any more, we'll proceed. Trustee McNally?
I just want to check that sometimes I mess these things up. So did I vote? Did I get you? Did you get my vote? Okay, good. Thank you.
Sorry, if I may, can I just clarify? We're not actually voting, we're nominating right now, correct?
Nominating trustees for the position of chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. The following trustee has been nominated for the position of chair of the Board of Education. Trustee Nicole Duncan. I'll now ask Trustee Duncan if she is willing to accept the nomination. Trustee Duncan, do you accept the nomination for the position of chair of the Board of Education?
I do, with my thanks to my nominators.
As we have only one trustee who has accepted nomination, Trustee Duncan is declared chair of the Board of Education by acclamation. Congratulations, Chair Duncan. I will now pass the gavel to you to preside over the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer, and thank you to my colleagues. I appreciate you putting your trust in me for another year. Okay, so let's move on with the voting process. The next position of vice chair will be again elected for a term of 1 year ending in November 2025. I will now call for nominations for the position of vice chair. Please again text your nomination to Associate Superintendent Arts. Please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of vice chair of the Board of Education to Associate Superintendent Arts. Associate Superintendent Arts will collect the text messages. Associate Superintendent Arts and Acting Associate Superintendent Powell will tally the text messages, identify all trustees who have been nominated, and then text the list of nominated trustees to the chair of the board.
Trustee Duncan, I have texted you the nominations.
Thank you very much. I haven't received it, so let me just see. Perhaps it came through as a multimedia message. So let me just see if I turn on Wi-Fi, if that comes through. Just bear with me a second. And it did, yeah. So we have 2 nominations for the position of vice chair. The nominations are for Trustee Kwan and Trustee Painter. So let me just move back to our script here. So I will now ask each nominated trustee if they are willing to accept the nomination. Trustee Kwan, do you accept the nomination for the position of vice chair?
With thanks to my colleagues, I do.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Trustee Painter, do you accept the nomination for the position of vice chair?
With thanks to my colleagues, I decline.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. And so now I will call for the election of the position of vice chair. Since we have only 1 nomination accepted, I'm very pleased to confirm that Trustee Kwan will serve another term as our vice chair. Congratulations, Trustee Kwan. Okay, so I'm going to move us through to our next item. Just bear with me. So we're now looking to the position of British Columbia Public School Employers Association, and otherwise known as BCPC representative. I will be elected again for the term of 1 year ending November 2025. I will now call for nominations for the position of BCPC representative. Please again text your nomination to Associate Superintendent Arts. Please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of BCPC representative of the Board of Education to Associate Superintendent Arts. Associate Superintendent Arts will collect the text messages, and Associate Superintendent Arts and Acting Associate Superintendent Powell will tally the text messages, identify all trustees who have been nominated, and text the list of nominated trustees to the chair of the board. Okay, so we have the following trustees nominated for our BCPC representative. I'm going to call, let me just get back to the script so that I don't run afoul here. The following trustees have been nominated for the position of BCPC representative: Trustee Painter, Trustee Kwan, Trustee Mabobi, and Trustee Gagnon. I will now ask each nominated trustee if they are willing to accept the nomination. Trustee Painter, are you willing to accept the nomination?
With thanks, I'll decline again.
Thank you. Trustee Kwan, are you willing to accept the nomination?
With thanks to my colleagues, I accept.
Thank you. Trustee Mabobi, are you willing to accept the nomination?
Excuse me. With thanks to my colleagues, I decline.
Thank you. And Trustee Gagnon, are you willing to accept the nomination?
With thanks to my colleagues, I will also decline.
Thank you. All right, so without further ado, by acclamation, Trustee Kwan will serve as our board's BCPC representative. Thank you, Trustee Kwan, and thank you, colleagues. Okay, and we're now moving into the nominations for our BCSTA provincial councillor. So the position of British Columbia School Trustees Association, BCSTA Provincial Councillor, will again be elected for a term of 1 year ending November 2025. I will now call for nominations for the position of BCSTA Provincial Councillor. Please text your nominations to Associate Superintendent Arts. Please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of BCSTA Provincial Councillor of the Board of Education to Associate Superintendent Arts. Associate Superintendent Arts again will collect the text messages, and he, along with Acting Associate Superintendent Powell, will tally the text messages, identify all trustees who have been nominated, and text the list of nominated trustees to the chair of the board. Okay, so the following trustees have been nominated for the position of BCSTA Provincial Councillor. Trustee Gagnon, Trustee Bayo, Trustee Mabobi, and Trustee Duncan. I will now ask each of the nominated trustees if they are willing to accept the nomination. Trustee Gagnon, are you willing to accept the nomination?
With thanks to my nominator, I decline.
Thank you. Trustee Bayo, are you willing to accept the nomination?
With thanks to the nominator, I decline.
And thank you, Trustee Bayo. And Trustee Mabobi, are you willing to accept the nomination?
With thanks, I accept.
And I guess I asked myself, Trustee Duncan, are you willing to accept the nomination? With thanks to my nominator, I decline. All right, so we now, by acclamation, would like to congratulate Trustee Mabobi, who will be our provincial councillor for the period of 1 year ending in November 2025. Congratulations. Okay, so that concludes the election portion of our agenda this evening. I want to thank everyone, including our staff, for helping us navigate that. And I'm going to turn us back to the next item on our agenda this evening. So we first have one last housekeeping motion under A3E, and that is a motion to destroy the election ballots / text messages, and looking for a mover and a seconder for that. Thank you, Trustee McNally. And a seconder? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you again, folks. Okay, so our next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. We've got two sets of minutes to approve this evening. The first is the October 28th regular board meeting minutes. Trustees, again, I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Bayo, moving those, and seconded by Trustee Kwan. Any changes or amendments to those? I think I have one for us. Does anyone else have any amendments to these minutes? Okay, so I just have one, and that is on page 13 of the pack-up. So this is the second question, the second answer under question period. And we would add the words "with staff" at the end of the that answer. So let me just go so I can describe that a little bit better. So if we go to page 13, you'll see the answer. Chair Duncan stated that the board will continue to make the work plan available to the public. It was noted that there has been a delay in providing the work plan as the board is working through some revisions. And so at the end of that sentence, it would say the board is working through some revisions with staff, full stop. Looking for a mover and a seconder for that amendment. Moved by Trustee Painter, seconded by Trustee Mabobi. Any further discussion in relation to that amendment? Or any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment to the minutes? And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, we have any further amendments that folks would like to move before I call for approval of the minutes as amended? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the amended minutes? That is unanimous. Thank you, folks. Okay, we have one more set of minutes to approve, and that is for this special board meeting. Again, let me just scroll down of the 14th of November. This was a special open board meeting. Do we have any? Well, first of all, call for a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee Painter. Any changes or amendments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approval of those minutes? And that is again unanimous. Thank you, folks. Okay. So we are now in business arising from the minutes, and looking again to colleagues, if you have any business arising from the minutes. Just one question, but I know the superintendent isn't with us this evening, and so I'm not sure if Associate Superintendent Arts might be able to help us with this one, and if not, we can talk to the superintendent at another time. But just wondered if there's any update in relation to some of the consultation, the further consultation going on at elementary school level with PACs on the school plans.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, we're having some sound issues. I'm thinking you can hear me though. Okay, thank you. Yes, we did speak to all administrators at a administrator meeting at all levels, elementary, middle, and secondary, about ensuring that their school plans are brought to their PAC and included in that conversation. So that has been done.
Wonderful. Thanks for the update. Appreciate that. Any other business arising from the minutes? Okay, I'm going to move us on then. We don't have any student achievement or district presentations. We do have a community presentation under A8A. I would like to welcome Dr. Rebecca Nellums. Did I get your last name right? And if I didn't, please correct me. I did? Okay, welcome. Nice to have you here with us this evening. I don't think you've presented to us before, so let me just go over the process so that you know. Essentially, you will have 5 minutes. I do time the presentations, and I will let you know when you're about a minute from the end. So again, just pardon my interruption. I will let you know when you've got about a minute left. But yeah, without further ado, whenever you're ready, you're welcome to begin.
I had a presentation to share my screen. Is that?
Oh, sorry, we're having a little bit of trouble with the audio. We're having trouble hearing you. Is it possible to reposition your mic?
My
headset wasn't working. Are you able to hear me better now?
Yes, that is
Okay, all
fine.
right. Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping to share my screen.
Yeah, sure. I'll just
Thank you
turn
so
to our
much.
staff just to enable that.
Thanks so much.
We're ready for that? Okay, yeah, go ahead and share your screen when you're ready.
Thank you so much. I will start my 5 minutes now then. Thank you so much for including me on the agenda tonight. It's wonderful to hear such support for research in the room tonight. I am here in my capacity as a researcher and professor at Athabasca University. And I'm also associate faculty at the School of Leadership at Royal Roads University. And I'm here tonight to present and to inform you of and seek your input and participation into research that is upcoming starting next year that's focused on youth gang exploitation in Greater Victoria. And this is research that I'll be conducting in collaboration with the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, as well as the Pacific Centre Family Services Association. This research has come out of the findings and recommendations of an initial scoping review conducted earlier this year on the Mobile Youth Service Team, or MIST, as it's also known. And to be clear, because of the conversation earlier, this is distinct from school police liaison officers. It's a youth exploitation and gang prevention program for all of Greater Victoria. So the review analyzed existing MIST data, interviews with key informants from a range of sectors, and peer-reviewed academic literature on youth gang prevention. A surging population amidst the intersecting crises of growing homelessness, poverty, youth mental health issues, the opioids epidemic, and rising sexual and online exploitation are among the multiple factors adding complexity and intensity to youth gang exploitation and entrenchment in Greater Victoria today. Youth gang exploitation is a challenge that crosses sectors, geographic, administrative, and political jurisdictions in our communities. Because of this complexity, it's an issue that has no single cause and no single solution, and approaches to addressing it must be multi-pronged, collaborative across sectors, and systems thinking in orientation. For the past decade, community and youth services, foundations, government, and police agencies have funded MIST, a two-person prevention team made up of one counselor and one police officer. MIST operates across sectors in the 13 municipalities that make up the CRD. Having built strong relationships with youth and their families, the MIST team meets youth not only where they're at with respect to their particular needs, but also where they are geographically, which includes not only working with youth in our schools, but also in health clinics, hospitals, community spaces, in their homes, on the street, and beyond. Based on a review of MIST's program data, MIST has a strong success rate of 88% with an active caseload of over 250 youth. Results range from youth exiting from gangs to engaging in new pro-social activities. This number, however, does not reflect the demand or need for their services, but rather their maximum capacity due to being only a two-person team. It also doesn't reflect the positive outcomes for families, non-gang youth, schools, the health system, and the wider community. While adhering to an academically validated approach to youth gang prevention, it's noteworthy that MIST also has a range of unique features that make it an important model that other Canadian cities could replicate. Despite its results, its cost efficiency, and the needed addresses, MIST has been precariously funded through short-term limited grants for the past 10 years. And it's my assessment that this is due to its falling through the cracks of agencies' jurisdictional, geographic, and institutional funding silos. Insofar as these are impeding the effectiveness of the program and youth access to it, including those youth who are most at risk in our communities, these institutional practices have themselves become risk factors to youth and community well-being. Recently, MIST has reached a funding crisis, with the program's counselor reduced to 2 days a week and secure long-term funding not in place. The program's future is uncertain. Given that MIST contributes to positive outcomes for the youth and communities,
Sorry, you have 1 minute left.
it's urgent that we not let this program fall through the cracks further. Indeed, it is my hope that while I know the topic of SPLOs has been highly divisive, that common ground might be found in support of the work that MIST is doing in our communities. The planned research is action-oriented as a result and will be initiated early next year. It seeks to engage leaders from across sectors and institutions, including levels of government, health, education, and the police, to collaboratively identify how we might ensure long-term support for youth gang prevention programming. It centers the experience of young people so we can better understand the supports and challenges they face, and it will study the NIST model, establishing a data collection system that can generate statistics that's useful to all actors. It will enable us to be able to make recommendations for how to continually improve and build upon the program and disseminate information about what's working with NIST, so it could be a model for other cities. We anticipate the outcomes.
And sorry, that's time. I know it goes by so quickly. Thank you very much. You know, we always sort of offer without any obligation, of course, but you're welcome to take some questions if you wish, but again, you're not obliged to. But I just like to open that as a possibility for our presenters when they wish.
I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you. Trustee Painter, go ahead. Sorry, would you mind just stop sharing just so that I can see everybody again a little easier? Thank you very much. Okay, Trustee Painter, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Nellens. We have heard time and again about the effectiveness of MIST. It's a resource that I think we all value here. I was wondering, didn't quite get to the research question. Is this something that you have the resourcing to move forward with at this point?
We have received a small grant from Athabasca University. We have put in for federal research funding. We're currently waiting to hear on that, and we'll be submitting another grant in the spring. However, we do plan to go ahead with research, given the urgency of the funding crisis they're facing. And the real focus of it is not just on understanding MIST as an effective model. The real focus is also on bringing collaborating actors together from across sectors so that we can actually come up with a plan collaboratively that's for interagency support to secure long-term funding for youth gang prevention programming long-term in the city.
Thank you very much. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, appreciate the presentation, and we do actually have the information in our pack-up and have read through it, so I really do appreciate the amount of research that has gone in already too. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I guess my question for you is really, I think this is an introduction to the research that will be ongoing, but is there kind of an action or something that you're requesting from our board at this time, or is it more just a preparation of that this is going?
Thank you so much for that. Yes, this is definitely community engaged research. And so it hasn't begun yet. It will be beginning next year, and just starting to meet with different groups to inform them of the research and to seek your input and participation in an ongoing way. And so while we will be planning to publish various academic, peer-reviewed journal articles, etc., we also plan to be very regularly updating community, as this is community data, this is community owned knowledge, and we hope to be sharing that in an ongoing way. So to follow up, my contact information is there in the package, and I welcome anyone to get in touch with me by that email that's available, and would welcome input.
Thank you very much. Trustee Kwan, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up with regards to community, and I did notice in the research that you presented so far under 5.2, the key informant interviews, the KIIs. I noticed the SD61 and SD62 listed there, but I don't see SD63, which would be our Saanich School District. And I just wondered if you had them on board or if that's still something you're looking to do.
Yeah, this was an initial scoping review. So it was just initial qualitative research being conducted so that it could inform the design and the shape of even the research question moving forward. So we weren't able to reach everybody that we hope to and plan to engage for the research, and it certainly will include all the school districts. Thank you for noticing that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And again, we really appreciate you taking the time this evening, and thank you for your patience while we worked our way to our community presentation section. Take good care.
Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Good night. Okay, folks, I'm going to move us forward in our agenda package. We are now at correspondence under B. the B1 through B4. Trustees, looking to you to see if there's anything that you wish to pull for discussion. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
I have a couple items. I can go in order here. The first one I would like to pull is the letter from the Greater Victoria Teachers Association, dated September 27, 2024. And with leeway here with my fellow trustees, colleagues, I'd like to just actually read part of the letter for those that are watching, as well as anyone who might watch the recording later.
So, Trustee Kwan, before you do, I just want to clarify. So you're speaking to the Greater Victoria Teachers Association letter to Minister Singh regarding ministerial directive on safety in school district number 61.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for clarifying. Okay, great. So for those following along in the pack up, I'm going from page 45 to 46, starting kind of halfway through the paragraph there. We know that the alleged increases in gang violence and recruitment is not something we see day to day in our schools. And despite repeated requests to the police to provide any evidence they have of this, it has not been forthcoming. What is real are the dire conditions in public schools, which are a direct result of ongoing austerity funding. Those working in and attending schools face a lack of basic classroom resources and supplies, let alone the lack of extracurricular enrichment students need. A severe lack of counselors and mental health services, filthy and unmaintained buildings, overcrowded classrooms, and not nearly sufficient specialist learning support to meet the desperate need. These unsustainable working conditions are leading to a mass exodus of teachers and other education workers from an unmanageable career. It is outrageous that police seemingly have a direct conduit to the Minister of Education, while teachers on the ground in our schools are routinely left unheard.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan.
That was the first I would like to pull. I'd also like to pull from the letter from the corporation, the Township of Esquimalt, dated October 9th, regarding consideration of a trustee electoral area election model.
Go ahead,
if I may.
Please do.
And just speaking to the motion that they mentioned in the letter, therefore be it resolved that the Township of Esquimalt asks that the Greater Victoria School District 61 Board of Education consider a trustee electoral area election model to be implemented in time for the 2026 local government / Board of Education electives. And I wanted to clarify a little bit, according to what I know and some of the research that I've done, is that under the School Act, Part 4, Division 1, composition of the board 30, number 3 so it basically says the minister must by order establish the following for each school districts, and then from under B 1, 2, and 3, it's basically up to the minister whether electoral districts are used in a school district. So while we appreciate the advocacy from the township and other municipalities that have weighed in on that, weighed in on their letter, I think probably the letter is misdirected. Perhaps it needs to be directed to the minister.
Thank you very much, Trustee Kwan. Appreciate that. Any other correspondence that trustees would like to discuss or pull? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move us on our agenda with, again, my thanks to my colleagues. We are now at trustee reports. The first one is C1 Chair's report. You have my report there for your information. You also, well, I guess I just want to sort of highlight that it's there and for your information, but I do want to highlight something from the report, just as a reminder to my colleagues that trustee assignments are going to be made again in December for our standing committees, ad hoc committees, and subcommittees. And so if you do have any preferences or reviews that you would like to share in advance of those assignments being made, then please do let me know. Under the C1B is also the 2024-2025 district annual work / board work plan. And again, we appreciate your patience while we brought that together. We did make a few revisions to the introductory section and then also made some additions to various months set out in the work plan. So with that said, again, opened to any questions or comments that folks have in relation to those two items under Chair's report. Yeah, President Hutchins, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Duncan, for the opportunity to speak to this item. VC PAC perhaps has a couple of questions or comments as it relates to the district annual work plan. And we, in reviewing the district annual work plan, VC PAC noted that while the work plan is quite comprehensive and there's quite a lot on the go, the work plan doesn't capture some of the board resolutions that have been passed of late that may be of more substantive of nature. And so the question is, do some of those board resolutions from past meetings belong in the work plan? I'll give an example. It's not comprehensive, but I think the board, when we talked about the school growth plans, suggested that while they'd go back to PACs for consultation this year, perhaps for next year's school growth plans, that we look to have common targets, measurement, and resources aligned so that the board could start finding commonalities between schools as these work plans then are rolled up to help the board articulate potential changes to policy or programs and have a better sense of data that's coming. And so I would imagine if the school growth plans as they were coming forward for next school year were being prepared as part of the work plan, it might be incumbent that in, say, February or March, those common measurements are coming forward for debate at committee and then the board level. And that might be a substantive body of work. So that's just one example of some great work that the board is doing in this past separate motions for that we've noticed over the past few months. And so the broader question is, how does independent board resolutions get inserted into this work plan beyond the resolution tracker, so that way folks like VC PAC and others can see where they're coming forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Hutchins. Yeah, that's some very great, very constructive feedback. I like the idea of looking at that and seeing how we might incorporate that into our work plan. I'm going to open up the floor for a little bit of discussion to see if, I want to provide, first of all, our staff, who are obviously a really essential part of how we manage our work plan. If our staff have any comments or thoughts that they want to share around that idea. And if not, then I think we can certainly commit to taking that away and seeing how we might incorporate that suggestion. I know that it can be challenging, even for us as a board, to always track when things are coming back. And it's just a very practical option for us to be able to track that ongoing work rather than just relying solely on the both our staff to keep us on track, but also the resolution tracker online. Okay, so thank you again, and we'll take that away and consider that, how that might be incorporated into the way we manage our work plan moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to move us on, folks, unless there are any other questions or comments in relation to the chair's report this month. Okay, so we are now at board committee reports under D. The first report is under D1. This is the Education Policy and Directions Standing Committee. There are no resolutions or recommended motions coming from Ed Policy this month. There is a set of draft minutes for information only. At D2, we have our Operations Policy and Planning Standing Committee. Again, at A, we have the draft minutes for information only, and at B, we have a number of recommended motions. Trustees, I would turn to you for some direction about how you would like to proceed. Do you want to move these as a group? Do you want to pull any motions for discussion? How would you like to proceed? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
I will move them as a group as long as there's no objection.
Look to colleagues. I'm not seeing any objection, so I'll look for a seconder. Is that a second? Thank you, Trustee Painter. All right, so we're moving these as a group. I'm going to read them into the record just so that it's clear. The first recommended motion that we're moving is that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, accept revised Administrative Regulation 1161.4, critical incident and privacy breach. The second recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, accept the September 2024 quarterly financial report as presented to the Audit Subcommittee. And finally, the third recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the superintendent to update Regulation 1330, Community Use of Schools and Grounds, and Regulation 1325, Partnership, to require that a business case is prepared and presented to the Board of Education for consideration and approval prior to the school district entering into negotiations regarding potential joint use agreements or other partnerships with external parties regarding the use of schools and grounds, and further provide the Board of Education any additional recommendations regarding updates needed to Regulations 1330 and 1325. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor for discussion. First, I'm going to turn to our partners to check in to see if our partners have anything that they would like to add around these motions. Okay, not seeing any hands. So trustees, any discussion? I just have one item to highlight really more than anything. It came up through our discussion of the third recommended motion, and just a very kind of helpful comment that we received from our QP 382 rep around the committee table, just sort of highlighting the need for our business cases, not just to include a financial analysis and to be very focused on our school district's needs and our financial analysis, but also to really be looking at things like student access to facilities, to be looking at things like ongoing maintenance and repair and how we're planning to manage that moving forward. So just wanted to highlight that. And again, with our thanks for those contributions. Any other discussion in relation to the recommended motions? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motions with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, trustees. I'm going to move us on. We are now at D3. This is the Climate Action Plan Implementation Review Ad Hoc Committee. There were a couple of recommended motions coming from this committee. I want to just turn to the committee chair, Trustee Gagnon. Trustee Gagnon, did you want to say anything in respect to these motions or provide us any advice on how we might dispense of these this evening?
Thank you, Chair. So the Climate Action Committee, or the Climate Action Plan Committee, met on Wednesday, November 13th. And one of the things that we discussed was a lack of ongoing funding committed towards climate initiatives within the district, as well as the province as a whole. There are a number of initiatives that we would like to see in terms of cost-saving measures as well as emission-saving measures. And I know that I will be forgetting things, but we also wanted to see more in terms of capital planning investment, because as the climate changes and our buildings continue to age, we have a task where we are dealing with hotter summers where we don't necessarily have the infrastructure in place, such as heat pumps, air conditioning, to keep our buildings at a comfortable and safe temperature for our students and staff, but also making sure that when we are planning for future builds, we are incorporating best practices of what we could be doing for outdoor learning spaces, what we can be doing for shading, what we can be doing for trees and other infrastructure. So that is where this initiative came from. It's a little vague because climate covers a lot of areas, but that's generally where this motion originated from.
Thank you very much, Trustee Gagnon. Much appreciated. So let me just read the motion, and I think it is prudent perhaps with these ones just to look at them separately, subject to direction from my colleagues. The first one is that the Board of Education of SD61 Greater Victoria write to the provincial government advocating for increased funding for climate action initiatives, facilities developed through capital funding, nutrition programming, and other initiatives in need of advocacy. So I think we can maybe do a bit of wordsmithing to perhaps improve a little bit upon this. And I think that I know that Acting Associate Superintendent Powell, who supports the committee on the staff side of things, I know reached out with some suggestions for potential rewording or just maybe enhanced wording. Around the second item in this list, or facilities development, I think his suggestion was that we say comma and increased funding for the development of facilities projects that would support nutrition and recycling programs for students. So in the interest of, wanting to adhere to what the committee was hoping to achieve, perhaps we can look at that second item in the list of things here, the facilities developed through capital funding, and I think we need to kind of at least improve that wording. So again, I'm looking to colleagues, I guess, first and foremost for a mover and a seconder, and then we can open the floor up to discussion with our partners and then with trustees around how we might add on the motion or improve upon it. So trustees, let's get this on the floor. Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, moving it, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Okay, so again, that second item in this list, right now it just reads facilities developed through capital funding. So at the very least, I think we need to deal with the grammatical issue, but beyond that, is there a possibility of teasing that out? So do we want to say something like, develop the development of or I don't know, something about capital funding, increase funding for climate action initiatives to support the facilities maintenance and repair. Do we want to focus it on that? Nutritional programming and other initiatives in need of advocacy. Looking for some suggestions, but I'm going to open it up to our partners because I'm wordsmithing already and I'm getting ahead of myself. And I want to hear from our partners who might have some thoughts about how we might, about this motion and how we might wordsmith it a little bit. So partners are on the table. Did you have any thoughts about this particular motion and any advice for us? Yeah, President Howe, go ahead.
Yeah, it's awesome. Very excited to see the work that this committee is bringing forward already. I guess my question, yes, I'm a little bit confused about specifically what development of the facilities you're thinking of. Is that retrofitting? Is this climate specific? It doesn't seem clear to me in the motion, so I was wondering if the trustee who was attending there that could maybe speak a little more broadly to that, and similarly actually to the nutrition programming and how that fits in with the climate initiatives. Thanks.
Yeah, great questions, President Howell. Thanks for raising those. I suspect that Trustee Gagnon is going to help us out with that. So Trustee Gagnon, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the facilities development issue there was in regards to making schools infrastructure, both existing and new, to adapt to a changing climate. So that would be for new schools, possibly looking at things like solar panels, looking at ways of cooling, looking at ways of, as Brian Leslie, the energy manager for the district, was looking at ways of managing the use of electricity just to keep emissions levels down, because that's really one of the biggest ways that we can impact change with our buildings. Our buildings are as leaky and old as some of them are, where a lot of our carbon emissions come from. So that's where the facilities piece was. And then nutrition programming, we know that there are still students that are going to school without as much food in their stomachs as would be ideal. We were looking at things like community gardens, school gardens, ways where food could be acquired on site, but also just increasing more funding, which is why when looking at the recommended motion, it was writing to the provincial government, because there are a number of ministries that would be involved in these initiatives. There's no one ministry that is covering all of the bases, so that's why that was labeled that way. And I'll stop there, and hopefully that answered a modicum of that question.
Thank you, Trustee Gagnon. President Reed, thanks for your patience. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Through the chair, first off, I'd like to apologize for not attending the Climate Action Committee meetings. Unfortunately, it's a conflict. They've been at exactly the same time as our executive meetings. But I did put out the call for a non-executive member to perhaps join in the committee until such time as I'm free of my duties and can get on that committee, because a lot of the things you touched on, I do have a lot of information and experience and whatnot with. And I'm sure Brian Leslie, the energy manager, remembers most of what we talked about before. But that's an aside. One of the things that I would suggest, as far as the motion is concerned, is quite possibly putting something in there, if possible, or as part of the motion, or as a justification for the motion. The appeal to the provincial government is the fact that a lot of these steps that we can take, there are actual cost savings, huge cost savings associated with that. It's a selling point. It's a way of saving money, and that money can be reapplied somewhere else. So it's a small investment for a greater return. So if there's some way you can spin it like, well, not spin it, but explain it like that, I think there might be more appetite from the provincial government, both financially and politically.
Thank you very much, President Reed. And thanks for letting us know that the time of the ad hoc committee meetings conflicts with your executive meeting. Perhaps we can look at that and maybe tweak it. I don't know if there's any overlapping time or.
Well, we're generally the second, the Wednesday before the second Saturday of every month. So except for this past month, which we postponed by 1 week because of Remembrance Day. So, and that's when it fell. So thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Okay, so yeah, I know a great point. I think that's definitely something that we do want to highlight, just as it's a much more positive way to highlight it. I often talk about it as the lost opportunity costs when we make these big investments in our capital infrastructure and don't take advantage of the opportunity to do so in a way that increases our resiliency and allows us to adapt to the changing climate. Trustee Kwan, thanks for your patience. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, if there's no more discussion, I have a suggested amendment.
Let me just check in one more time with our partners just to see if anyone else on the partner side of our virtual table this evening would like to speak further to this. And if not, then yeah, that would be appreciated. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Kwan.
All right, so it would be that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, write to the provincial government advocating for increased funding for climate action initiatives, including funding for facility upgrades to adapt to a changing climate, nutrition programming and other initiatives. And I can type that in the chat if
that would be appreciated. Thank you very much. And yeah, I like the sound of that. So we'll just wait for it to get into the chat, and then I'll look for a mover and a seconder. While you're moving, I'll look for a seconder. Thanks, Trustee Gagnon. You're quick off the mark.
Apologies for any misspelling. I was typing fast.
No problem. We appreciate your willingness to put this in the chat for us. So I'll just look to staff just to perhaps send it so that everyone can see it. I don't actually see it in the chat at the moment. Okay, that's in the chat for everyone. So again, it's the Board of Education School District number 61, Greater Victoria, a little typo. Well, that's a friendly amendment. Right to the provincial government advocating for increased capital funding for climate action initiatives, comma, including funding for facility upgrades to adapt to a changing climate, nutrition programming, and other initiatives. Okay, so Trustee Kwan, you were moving. Trustee Gagnon was seconding. So let's open the floor for some discussion. I feel like we want to look at facility upgrades and perhaps expand that, because of course it isn't just upgrades, but also, you know, it might be just in the context of rebuilds or additions. You know, it isn't, you know, upgrades is important, but I think also, does that encompass the new builds and the additions and so on, and the lost opportunities, that costs associated with those? It's a question. Doesn't sound like a question, but it is a question. Looking to hear from folks what your thoughts are. I can just read it that way because I know this is going to be a task that's assigned to me, so I certainly could just read it more broadly, or we could look to amend it further. Any thoughts? Again, opening the floor to our partners first, and then to trustees. Okay, I'm not seeing any comments, so I will read that as we're happy with the way it is from a partner perspective. I'm going to move on to Trustee Painter. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was just, I don't think it requires any sort of amendment, but with respect to climate action initiatives, I hope we take into consideration electrification. Cedar Hill, as an example, was limited in its capacity because of existing hydro policies about the amount of energy that can be put into the grid. And while I accept that there are probably very real limitations in grid capacity, I noted that in other provinces, the ability for even homeowners to contribute to the grid and thereby benefit during off hours is an existing option. And I see that one as being very significant for us in our facilities moving forward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Trustee Painter. Yeah, very true. Yeah, we have discussed that as well already a little bit at the ad hoc committee level, but my commitment to the ad hoc committee was to bring a draft letter back to the committee so that they could also provide some feedback on, you know, where I get to improve upon the letter before it comes back to the board. So we'll definitely look at that. Any other thoughts, trustees, in relation to the motion on the floor before I call the question? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you to our partners for your contributions this evening. Okay, so the next recommended motion coming from the ad hoc committee is that the Board of Education School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the amended Climate Action Plan Implementation Review Ad hoc Committee terms of reference. I'm going to turn again to the chair of the committee, Trustee Gagnon. Did you want to just walk us through those changes?
Thank you, Chair. Really, there are two primary changes to be seen. You can see them in track changes on pages 105 and 106 in the pack-up. The first change is in the membership category. 2 trustees will be members, and we are adding that one of those 2 trustees will serve as chair of the committee. And then the second change comes in the timeline in which there is a change on when the committee will report its findings to the board. It was initially in October. We are changing that to June to allow for more time and for meetings of that committee to actually occur in that academic year prior to submitting a report to the board.
Thank you very much, Trustee Gagnon. Okay, again, I'm gonna look to a mover and a seconder, and then I'll look to our partners for any comments before I turn to trustees for discussion. So who would like to move this one? Trustee Gagnon, thank you, seconded by Trustee Kwan. Great, just opening the floor to our partners if you have any thoughts in relation to the amendments to the terms of reference. All right, seeing none, trustees, any discussion before I call the question? All right, all those in favor of approving the revised terms of reference with a show of hands. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so we're moving on. We're now at E, District Leadership Team Reports, E1, Superintendent's Report. The Superintendent's monthly report is there. We have a recommended motion to receive the Superintendent's report as presented. I don't know if there's any questions in relation to the Superintendent's report. If there is, we can look to Associate Superintendent Arts or other staff who might be able to assist. Yeah, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. I see a couple of different references to principals and vice principals leadership development meeting and an administrators meeting both on the November 7th. And I just wondered what the difference was, or if it was just parsed out because of the different subject matter.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Associate Superintendent Arts, are you able to help us with that question of clarification?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, the administrator meeting is a meeting that all principals come to monthly. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the other meeting you referred to that happens in the afternoon where administrators are interested can come. There was a topic around legal and difficult conversations, investigations that took place. So those are the two. They happened on the same day, but different times.
Thank you very much, Trustee Kwan and Associate Superintendent Arts. Okay, any other questions before I looked for a mover to receive the Superintendent's monthly report? Trustee Gagnon, did you have a question as well?
I did, Chair.
Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Just in regards to the under goal 2 with the Songhees Nation local education agreements writing from November 20th, I recognize that the superintendent isn't here, but I do recognize that Dr. Wilton is. So I was wondering if there was possibility just for an update on how that is going.
Yep, no problem. I can give an update. We have a scheduled plan of writing for the LEA. So typically what we will do is it will be a writing year this year because the LEA is expected to expire on June 30th. And so we always spend a year in writing together. Spent time early in August setting up what the structure would look like with their education team, and to be able to make sure that it met everybody's timeline for needs and what the goals were going to look like. And we have now had 2 successful writing days. Both of them have been 3-hour writing sessions. And through that, we now have scheduled out for our next 2 meetings, which will be in January and early February, which are going to involve other areas of the school district, because they also are involved in areas of the local education agreement. Need that be inclusive education, need that be facilities, need that be English language learning, like all depending on what that looks like, student safety in and around those areas. And so what we do is we're following what our current local education agreement is in relation to using the model LEA that's been produced by FNESC. And we've been moving through that with the support of with the work. And I think that we're in a really good position that we'll have a draft to come forward, I think probably right around the end of March, that will go forward to review to Chief and Council and to the board. And then it'll go for signing. And so I think that we'll see a good opportunity for us to have a signing off on that. Probably, I would say if things meet the timeline, we're looking at probably the end of April, but we've left enough time for adjustment if we need to, pending that we want to have it secure and in place by the end of this current one expiring. And so I think there's lots of healthy discussion. I think there's new things that we're going to see that are going to come into that local education agreement because of the way that legislation has changed and the way that we look at Bill 40. I think in the way that we're looking at also on and off reserve nation members, right? And what that looks like. And so we're being really intentional on making sure that that's captured and included. And so I think that it'll be a very wholesome and well-written local education agreement that's going to be really reflective of the community's voice and desire and needs for how they want to see education services provided for their children on and off reserve within our school district and what that'll look like. And so I'm very confident that that we'll be able to move through it and that it'll take time. It's just going to take time, right? And so we've done that intentionally to start that in early October to build our way through it. So then that way it doesn't put us into a rush. And so I think that, yeah, we're well positioned, and I appreciate the question, Trustee Gagnon, because I think that these types of relationships are really critical. And I think that they require the maintenance and the conversations to be able to look at what does education look like, and what does that look like in the relationship, especially when you're purchasing education services for your children. And I think that the involvement of all departments within the local education agreement is really critically important because it isn't just one area of a school district, it's all areas of a school district. And I think that's that relational responsibility by pulling others in to help co-write that with the community, I think will just strengthen that relational responsibility. And so I have nothing further to report besides the fact that we've had now 2 writing dates and we've made it through some sections and that there is some really strong and great edits that have been provided. And we're just going to keep moving.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wilton. Appreciate the updates.
Thank you.
Any other questions, trustees, in relation to the superintendent's report this month? Okay, I'm going to look to a mover and a seconder to receive the monthly report. Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Gagnon. All right, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to E1B. This is the International Education Biannual Report. I see that we do have Dr. Davis here. Thank you for joining us this evening to present your biannual report. It's nice to see you. The floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I'll keep it as short as possible, given the time. It's getting late. So yeah, the biannual report, you can see there's some background around the international student enrollment policy and the contents of the report outlining future enrollment levels based on the availability of space. It's a report full of tables. So you have 3 tables with 3 years denoted. You have school capacity, projected enrollments, not including ISP. Something that we've added for 24-25 is the ministry funding eligible international students, and then the 24-25 as an example, annualized student enrollment. You can see I'm not going to read through the information. It's in the table on page 109 of the packet. You can see the data on enrollments at the 3 levels for ISP students and also for ministry funded international, and the projected enrollments at all schools for the next 3 years. So that's kind of a high level overview of the biannual report. If there's anything else that you'd like me to discuss, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, perhaps we open the floor just to questions in relation to the report and then just go from there. So trustees and indeed partners, if you have any questions in relation to the director's biannual report, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Perhaps I'll kick us off then. So I just wanted to clarify, so the 2024-2025, for instance, the table 1, projected enrollments, you note that it doesn't include ISP enrollment. I just wanted to clarify whether it includes eligible international student enrollment, like the ministry funded international students.
That would be within the school capacity, because that segment, that column would be as just included within the school capacity as they are ministry funded. So it's yes. Does that make sense?
So just to clarify, so the first column is school capacity and the second column being the projected enrollments for that school year. And then in brackets, it says not including ISP. Then you've got a third column, which shows it parses out the ministry funded international student enrollment. And I just wanted to clarify whether, so for instance, if we look at the first secondary school, we see a projected enrollment, not including ISP students, of 824. And then in the next column, we see ministry funded international students, our projections are 43. So I'm just wondering if that 43 eligible ministry funded international students is included in that 824 projected enrollment for the school year.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Sorry, I think I made a mistake when I see. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that. So the total enrollment, then if we were to look to try to clarify the total projected enrollment, we would need to add the 824 and the 43. And that would be the total projected enrollment. Pardon me, the 110 and the 824 to get the total. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any schools right now in either school year that you're projecting to be over enrollment? I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to kind of enhance the reporting and look at the data was just to ensure that we are in line with our capacity. We're not over enrolled in schools and that we're in line with the board's student enrollment priorities. And so it's difficult to tell without doing the maths all across, and I'm sure you've got this off the top of your head, but if you don't not to worry. But are there any schools that we're projecting to be over enrolled in light of the data in these tables?
I don't have that information at my fingertips, and I'd have to go through it line by line. There is one school, if you're looking at 25-26 as an example, Oak Bay Secondary School would be one that would be according to school capacity, and Beauregard and international student recommendations as an example would be slightly over.
Okay. Yeah, just as a request, it would be really helpful. Perhaps next time, I know we're sort of still trying to figure out the various iterations of this reporting as it's new. It would be super helpful to have just one more column, if it's possible, just having the totals so that it's easy for us when we're looking at the report just to grab which schools might be over enrolled, because that's sort of, I think, a key part of what we'll be looking at as we look at these reports moving forward. But yeah, thank you so much. Again, we appreciate you bringing this data to us and for hanging in there. I know it's a bit of a late night tonight, but we appreciate your presence. I'm going to now turn the floor back over to my colleagues if you do have any additional questions for the director. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So again, with our thanks, Director, you're welcome to leave the meeting if you'd like to get on with your evening. And again, thanks for being here.
I think I will. It has been quite a long day.
We understand. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so folks, I'm just going to move us back up our agenda to our next item. Just bear with me a second. We are now at C, which is the 2024-2025 middle school plans. And we do have a recommended motion to approve the 2024-2025 middle school plans as presented. Again, I'm going to open the floor first was it Associate Superintendent Arts? Are you presenting the plans this evening or speaking to this item, or is there anyone else that can speak to this item?
Thank you through the chair. No, they're there for your, if you have questions, I will try my best to answer them.
Sounds good. I think with these plans, like I know what came up with the elementary plans was just some direction to go and make sure that there had been engagement with PACs, and so I'm seeing in these plans that it looks to me like there's certainly indications that that has already happened at the middle school level. So perhaps we could just get some clarification around that.
Thank you through the chair. As mentioned at our last administrator meeting, following our last board meeting, we mentioned that to all of the principals, the importance of doing that, and all of them are aware of that. And so we're confident that that will take place or is taking place if they hadn't had a PAC meeting since then.
Thank you very much. So so just to clarify, sorry, it's getting late and I'm getting a little slower on the uptake, so bear with me. You're saying that the middle school plans that are in the pack up this evening have already been subject to that kind of consultation with PACs?
Sorry, yeah, just to clarify, and maybe I wasn't as clear as I could be. We mentioned that last month at our meeting, and the schools who hadn't done that will be doing that, but they may not have had a PAC meeting yet before this meeting, depending on the timing of when their PAC meeting is. But all schools are aware that they need to do that if they haven't.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so perhaps then in light of that, thanks for the clarification, Associate Superintendent Arts. Perhaps in light of that, we maybe want to look at our motion and if we want to move forward with approval, and knowing that perhaps some middle schools haven't yet had an opportunity to meet with their PACs to seek feedback, perhaps we say that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approved the 2024-2025 middle school plans subject to any final consultation with parent advisory councils, something like that, just to allow for that flexibility. What are your thoughts? I'm going to turn to our staff first. Yeah, go ahead, Associate Superintendent.
Thank you. To the chair. School plans are evolving. Always there's feedback coming from them all the time. So schools will continue to seek feedback, and through the course of this year, we may see new plans come to place next year. So, you know, we take a snap in time, a screenshot in time, but they're ever a circular sort of process where we're evaluating how they're working, looking at the data, looking at where we need to improve. So I think that it's hard to say that based on the feedback, because the feedback may actually change it. And next year when we bring the plans forward, some schools may keep the same goals and other schools may have really new plans based on the feedback that they get throughout the year. So I think knowing that the importance of bringing PACs into this, and there's a section, as you see in the school plans, that say, how are you involving communication with your parent community? And schools are identifying that. I think it would be fair to say that next year you will see new plans that have that involved. I don't know that that change is needed to approve the work that's been done already.
Okay. Yeah, I think what we're hoping to see moving forward is that that engagement with PACs, it happens before the plans get to the board, so that whatever feedback is agreed will be incorporated from that that engagement is in the plan before the board sees it. I appreciate that this year this is a work in progress, right? We're kind of feeling our way, and that perhaps that hasn't happened across the board. Yeah, Associate Superintendent Arts, go ahead.
Right. I think it's important to mention that I believe all schools were involving their PACs. I think that when in September, when the elementary schools came in October, people may not have talked at the September or October meeting, but they may have talked in the spring about their school goals. There are no schools that brought forward school goals that have not talked to their PACs. Now we're just looking at the cycle of bringing them forward on this timeline. People will know that before this to make sure that they refresh that with their PAC. But I'm very comfortable that all schools have engaged with their PACs and have filled that section in. They just may not have done it in September.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so I think then again, looking to my colleagues to move the recommended motion in the pack up, and then I'll look to our partners to see if they have any feedback for us. So trustees, can I look to have a mover to move the recommended motion? Thank you, Trustee Kwan, and a seconder. Trustee Mabobi, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move to our partners to see if you have any feedback on the plans. Okay, don't see any. So, oh, hold on. I moved too quickly. President Hutchins, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Duncan. Just one comment on the school growth plans, regardless if they're middle, elementary, or secondary school, when they come forward to the PACs. What we've been hearing come through our channels is that often the school growth plans, when they go forward to PACs, are the consultations at the goal level. But the goal is only one high level portion of the school growth plans, and I know, talking to some parents, that there's a desire to talk about the possibility of, in some cases, multiple goals, and not just maybe one goal, and then to get into the secondary level of targets, measures, and resources, so they understand the more robust elements of the school growth plan. So I guess the same feedback as the last meeting is, when the school growth plans go forward to the PACs, it would be great if it was not just a dialogue about the goal itself, but the document being presented and going through it in a little bit more detail, if possible.
Thank you very much, President Hutchins. I get some thumbs up from Associate Superintendent Arts. I'm sure that will be fed back through administrators' meetings and other appropriate channels. Thanks very much for sharing that. Okay. Trustees, I'm going to turn to you now. Is there any discussion in relation to the recommended motion on the floor? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Hold on. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Trustee Bio, would you mind indicating your vote? Oh, perhaps Trustee Bio is not available, so we'll show Trustee Bio as abstaining, and we'll move on. Okay, thank you, folks. Appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is trustee questions. So again, I'm going to open the floor to my colleagues if you have any questions. Sorry, Trustee Bio, did you want to indicate a vote? I'm happy to back up, or we could show it is an abstention.
Yeah, it's okay. I have getting over a cold, so just sneezing.
Oh, sorry. Okay, if you're okay with that, we'll show it as an abstention. All right, so trustees, we're now at trustee questions. Do you have any questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to cautiously, so don't get ahead of myself again, move on to the next item, which is E2 Secretary Treasurer's Report. And there's a recommended motion to receive the Secretary Treasurer's Report. But first, I'm going to turn the floor over to the Secretary Treasurer if you wish to highlight anything from your monthly report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, included in the agenda package is my monthly report, which provides a list of some of the activities that I've done since the last board meeting on October 28th. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. All right, folks, opening the floor for any questions that you have in relation to the Secretary Treasurer's monthly report. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious. I think the third thing on the list under activities was meetings with community partners, and I wondered if you had any more to add to that, like what type of community partners, or if there's anything that you can add.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Go ahead, Secretary Treasurer.
Well, there's a couple of community partners that I've met with. Sometimes there's interest by community partners in our facilities and just engaging in conversation with them around their needs within our school district, and if there's any way that we can assist.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the Secretary Treasurer before I call for a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Okay, trustees, I have a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee Bao. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so next is under B is the Sundance Bank Elementary School Engagement Report. Again, I'll turn the floor over to the Secretary Treasurer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've included the full Sundance Bank Elementary School Engagement Report in the public agenda. And it has also been posted onto the school district website as well. So it's accessible there, not just in the agenda package. This is a report that is a summary of engagement with stakeholders regarding the future seismic project at Sundance Bank Elementary School. This report is specific to an open house event that was held at the school on August 7th, 2024, as well as feedback that was received through an online survey from August 7th to August 31st, 2024. I've provided the report here for information. It was created by our communications specialist, Kelsey, in communications, and also with support from Facility Services Director Marnie Harwood and team. And I'll just add that the information that is contained in this report is being considered, that feedback is being considered as Marnie and team work with the architect and the ministry on the project definition report in order to advance the process with the ministry regarding funding for seismic. What we're proposing is a seismic replacement, so a new school. And Marnie is here. We're happy to try and answer any questions for you if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer. Okay, I'm going to open the floor for folks if you do have any questions. Trustee Kwan, kick us off.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know there was a few inquiries as to why this consultation was done in the summer. I know there was something to speed it up with the election coming up and getting funding for the project before that happened. But I actually wondered with regards to participation both in the event and in the survey. I see the event was 50 plus, including the staff members of the district that were there. And then it looks like there was a total of 487 responses to the survey. And I just wondered how that compares to other consultations that we've done that are similar to this for capital projects.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Secretary Treasurer.
Through the chair, that's a really good question. I would have to look back, I think, at like a previous seismic project, perhaps the Vic High ones, to see what the numbers were. I don't know. Marnie has been involved with some of the community consultations, but I think they've been for smaller items like childcare bills. So again, we're looking at a smaller community versus Vic High, so it may not be comparable.
Cedar Hill, I think, is in there somewhere too.
Right?
Yeah, I think maybe Cedar Hill is in there somewhere too.
Cedar Hill, yes. I don't have those numbers, but certainly something we could bring back for you.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Sorry, I just want to pause and turn to our Director of Facilities who might have some additional information before I go to Trustee Painter.
Yeah, in regards to open houses, Cedar Hill had about 60 to 70 participants. So I'd have to say this is actually a really good turnout, given that Sundance is a smaller school and an elementary school. But I'd have to get back to you on how many people responded to a survey for Cedar Hill Middle School.
Thank you. Trustee Painter, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate I'm probably getting ahead of this, the process on this one. But one of the things I was wondering about is if there've been any projections on where we will provide classroom space for Sundance Bank students on the assumption that construction goes forward.
I'm not sure who to direct that to. I'll direct it to the Secretary Treasurer, and then you can let us know who's best placed to answer that.
Yeah, I think all we can say at this point is we're definitely starting to think about that, but we wouldn't have any information that we could share at this point.
Any further questions in relation to the engagement report or next steps? So next steps, Secretary Treasurer, really further discussion, as you said, with the ministry around the PDR, and then from there, what happens after that? Those discussions occur in terms of next steps.
Well, thank you, Chair. I might have to defer that to Marnie, as she's been the one directly involved with the ministry, if she has an update on kind of where we're at. My understanding from their team is that there is quite a bit of back and forth between the school district and the ministry before we get to the point where we're in a place where they would provide funding approval. And I'm not sure the impact of the election on that timing. I think that was the push that we were facing in the summer to try to get this done prior to that. So I'm personally not certain where we're at with that, but I'll allow Marnie to add to that if she has any information.
Sounds good.
I can just add that we've sent it to the ministry. It's been reviewed. We actually got our draft comments back this morning. So there was a few of them. So we'll get those draft comments back into the PDR and we'll go back to the ministry for review. So there'll be a little bit more back and forth. We're trying to get it tidied up before Christmas. And then from there, once it's approved by the ministry, it will go to the Treasury Board for their approval. So we'll be in the queue essentially.
Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you very much. I don't see any other hands, and so I'm going to move us forward to C, and this is the 2025-2026 budget update. There are two items here, and I'm going to turn the floor over to the Secretary Treasurer to walk us through the first.
Thank you, Chair. It is my intention to have this as a standing item on the board agenda, and so just be bringing any and all budget related information for the next year to this item. What you have before you today are two items. The first one is the Values and Guiding Principles document. This was last approved by the board in the previous year's budget development process, so January 2024 was approved. I've included it in the agenda package with some track changes. I'll just highlight the changes that have been made, but if you see it there, the most predominant changes are around the change in our budget process with the acknowledging the role of the Indigenous Education Council, but also adding some language in relation to cultural safety and responsiveness throughout. Change the heading. The third reading was referring to the date in the prior year, so that's been updated. And also just added a few words in the first bullet under sustainability and ability to withstand change, just to recognize that the list of risks there are not fully inclusive, that there may be other risks that are not listed, including financial risks. And so those are the motions that are just being put forward from us for the board's consideration. But also there may be some additional updates that the board would like to see in the Values and Guiding Principles. So it's just being brought today for further feedback and any suggested changes that you would like to make. If we get to a place where you're happy to move forward, there is a motion there to approve the revised Values and Guiding Principles. Do you want to just stop there and then we can move on to the budget development process after that, since there is a motion tied to that?
That sounds great. Yeah, I think we have to sort of, it allows me to check in with the board to see whether you want to move forward and approve the revised Values and Guiding Principles this evening, or if you want to look at this again in December after further thought, or how you would like to proceed in relation to that one, and whether there's any further feedback you want to provide on the revisions. So how are we feeling? Do we want to move this item this tonight or next in a couple of weeks when we're back? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any feedback from our partners at all tonight. However, I'm always for giving it some thought and sleeping on it, as so to speak. So my preference would be for any comments from our partners that might have today, and then perhaps sleeping on it and bringing it back. I know our December meeting is quite soon anyway, so it doesn't leave it too long anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Trustee Kwan. Yeah, one of the options would be to refer this to the combined ed ops and then have further discussion there and further opportunity to provide feedback or make changes or amendments. So that's one option, is just to refer this to our combined ed ops in December. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
If there are no objections, I'm happy to move that.
Great, thank you. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Trustee Gagnon. Any discussion? Again, our partners are welcome to weigh in at this point if you have any thoughts about referring this over to the combined ed ops in December. Okay, trustees, any discussion before I call the question? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of referral to the ed ops in December? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, thanks, Secretary Treasurer. Feel free to present the next item, budget development process, when you're ready.
Thank you. So I brought back an updated budget development process. It was last approved by the board on October 28th with some suggested revisions. And so those revisions are now reflected in this document, as well as some of the dates have been updated. So I'll just give you a list of the items that have changed. I've tried to highlight them in red so they stand out. But we did adjust the dates for the budget survey. It was originally going out in early November. We've been taking time to make sure that we do the survey in a good way, and it'll actually, I think that process says it was going up today, but we held off and it's going to go out tomorrow. So you will see that going to be posted on our social media and our district website, and I believe I'll be sending it around to our education partners and BPVPA as well, just so we can get as much feedback as possible. And I included in the specific dates for each of the Student Connections meetings, which are throughout November, December, and January. Our first one is tomorrow. And I've also identified January 27th as the board meeting where we will present staff options for expenditures and reductions. So trying to do that earlier in the process so we can have more conversations, which ties into the next item, which was a shift for meetings with education partners and BPVPA. Instead of meeting at the beginning of the budget process, I've now set the first meetings to occur in February after that January 27th meeting, and then the second meeting after spring break and before budget deliberations, the first set on April 8th. So hopefully that will meet the needs of the board. Last change is the communications board budget highlights that were set for April 10th, the day after the board meeting. We are shifting that to be a budget bulletin newsletter that will go on April 11th, and then just to be mindful that if there are translations which have been requested, that might take a little bit longer for those to go out. So there is a motion there to approve the updated budget development process. I don't believe this is a final version of this document. I think it's just going to continue to grow with us through this process. So I'll just keep bringing it back with any further updates. So we know we're always looking at the most current version.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer. Appreciate all your hard work on this. I'm gonna open the floor to any questions, first of all, or comments that folks have, including our partners, in relation to this item. Okay. Trustee Gagnon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanting to clarify that the partner connections is in place of what was talking tables last year and the year before.
Secretary Treasurer, go ahead.
In the process last year, there were education partner meetings and meetings with BPDPA, but they were timed around the same time as the student connection. So right at the beginning of the budget process, it was more around budget priorities. And so it's a little bit of a shift, but that we're doing it after we have some like real recommendations just to get actual feedback on potential options for the boards that the board might be considering. And then also another feedback loop before budget deliberation. So if there's been anything that's happened between that first and second meeting. So talking tables, yes, I think talking tables was probably a bit more hypothetical. So it highlighted some of the challenges that we have and then looked at solutions, but not necessarily actual options that were being considered. So I guess you could say it's a bit of a combination. However, the partner meetings are just specifically with each partner, so they're not all combined. Yeah. That's all I have on that.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Thanks, Trustee Kenyo. Any other questions or comments in relation to the revisions? Okay, so I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Do you want to then move the motion? The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District Number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the updated 2025-2026 budget development process. Thank you, Trustee Kwan, and seconded by Trustee Mabobi. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the revised process? And that is unanimous. Thanks very much, trustees, and thanks, Secretary Treasurer, again for all your work on this. We appreciate it. Okay, so we're now at question period, and I'm going to turn to Associate Superintendent Arts to assist me with this portion of the agenda. Do we have questions? I guess is the first question that I have.
Yes, there are 4 questions this evening. I have emailed them to you in that order.
Okay. All right, so bear with me while I have a look. So, and just procedurally for everybody, just a reminder, we have 15 minutes allotted on each of our board agendas for questions. Each requester has the option of asking one question. And I will either answer it if I can or turn to staff to assist me if that's appropriate. And if we can't provide an answer this evening, then we will commit to come back and provide an answer later in writing. So let's get stuck in here. First one. Just bear with me. I just need to unpack this a little bit. Okay. Okay, so I think this requester perhaps at another previous meeting asked a number of questions, and in line with our bylaw, we went with the first. It looks like they're submitting their questions again, so I will look to the second question in the list here. So that it is, why did it take the Minister of Education to direct this board to update the school safety plan and work with local police departments? And so the board engaged with police services initially when we invited the police services to take part in our review committee work. And then following our decision last year, the board invited all the police boards to meet with us to discuss student safety. We sent letters of invitation in September of last year. And then in addition to that, we've continued to seek to collaborate with our policing partners through various meetings with the police boards and staff and our board. And in addition to that, invited police boards to participate in the development of a communication protocol. Some police boards took us up on that invitation. Others, prior to the minister's order, were still undecided as to whether or not they wanted to participate in the development of a communication protocol. And so we move forward with the police services that were interested in working with us on a communication protocol using delegations from both police services and a board and staff delegation. That development work progressed a little bit throughout the summer. And then we were looking to continue that work when the minister's order came out. Let me just review the questions, see if there's anything else that we want to add. I think the other thing to add with this one is just to clarify. So our safety plan and our work is something that's ongoing and exists in our school district, always has. And what we've done as a district is to submit a plan which highlights what safety looks like in our district. The new items that have been added to our safety approach, our safety plan in our district are highlighted in what we've submitted to the minister. And ultimately, it will be down to the minister to look and to review that plan. I'm just going to look to staff because obviously, you know, it's not just about the board. This is also about operational and ongoing operational safety planning. If there's anything that you would like to add before I move on to the next question. Okay. Let's go to 2. Just bear with me a second. So regarding the worrisome online behavior program, what is the annual cost to the district for funding the program? That I'm definitely going to need to refer to our staff to get some clarity about what costs are associated with those reports.
Thanks, and through the chair, I don't have an invoice on me right now, Chair, but I do know that it's approximately $900 per month. So somewhere between 10,500 and about 11,000 would be our annual cost for WOB reports, which includes a monthly report, and then also when it's a reach out from us to Safer Schools Together.
Thank you very much, Acting Associate Superintendent Powell. Appreciate that. Okay, the next question is why is this board using stats and experiences from the United States and Toronto to make decisions about removing services such as school police liaison officers from our children while not listening to our regional professionals and parents of these students? So in response to that question, what I would share is that our board has not only looked at United States and Toronto. The previous boards passed a resolution directing that a review be undertaken of how we use SLOs, or how we previously did. And that review happened over a number of years and included thousands of pages of information, data, research from other jurisdictions, research from Canada. And in addition to that, it also included feedback that we received from the partner representatives around the committee table, feedback that we received through a speaker series, which involved folks having an opportunity to come to the review committee and share their thoughts, views, and experiences, both in person and also in writing. It also included the survey results, of course, which the board considered before coming to our determination. We also looked at the recommendations that we heard more about this evening from the Human Rights Commissioner, and part of the advocacy that we have committed to and carried out does involve the letter that we wrote in August of 2023, asking the province to commission research into the impacts of SLOs on K-12 students, with a particular focus on minoritized students, students with diverse abilities and disabilities. And so I don't think we can add anything else in terms of that, but just to say we considered a lot of different information, and I think the Human Rights Commissioner spoke better to it than I could in terms of I think there's a recognition that there does need to be additional research, and we do need to have access to disaggregated data. We, after our decision, also went and asked each police service to provide us with some data to help us understand the topic with the privilege of accessing some disaggregated data. Okay, so question number 4. This one is, did the Human Rights Commissioner consult with the 4 houses before she made her recommendations about removing SLOs? And then in brackets, it says Saanich Police Liaison Officers. So that is not a question for us. That would be a question for the individual respectfully to pose to the Human Rights Commissioner if they wish. I just want to check in with staff. Are there any other questions, or was it just the 4?
Thank you. It was just the 4 questions tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we have a number of items under G, public disclosure of in-camera items there that's there for your information under G1 to G5. We our new business item we've already dispensed of earlier in our agenda. I don't believe we have any notice of motions, but just checking in with colleagues to see if there are. Don't see any hands, and so that leaves us to adjournment. And again, I'll look to my colleagues for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Trustee Gagnon. Seconder. Second by Trustee Bio. And I'm going to call the question. And all those in favor of adjournment with a show of hands.